This week on the show, I'm talking with Camo Lionheart and Justin Bonnell. Camo, you might recognize the name. He's been on a couple times, but this is the first time for Justin. So I just finished a 6-week men's circle hosted by these two gentlemen, and it was a beautiful experience. Had amazing breakthroughs for myself, and was able to witness some breakthroughs from some other brothers. And so today, wanted to bring them on to talk about what that 6-week container looked like, what drew them to want to do men's work, and what they're doing with that work and that knowledge now that they have it. It's beautiful work. It's not just men's work. We're going to talk about men's work today, but work is work, whether you're a man, woman, whatever you identify as. There's work that we have to do as human beings. Find the container to do that work. This is one of those containers. Hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, welcome back to our show. Today on Journey of the Modern Soul, I'm talking with two beautiful human beings, Mr. Camo Lionheart and Justin Bonnell. Camo and Justin are two of the facilitators that just finished our men's group. We had a six-week men's container that we were holding, and Justin and Camo were the facilitators and guided us through this beautiful, beautiful experience for 6 weeks with about 6 to 8 other guys. And so the purpose for today was really to talk to y'all about the experience you had in the men's container that we held, and also to give our listeners a little bit of understanding about what kind of work that can be done. This is men's work, but this is also work that can be done, cross cultural, right? It can be women's work, can be men's work. I think it's the idea of just doing work in general, right? So working on ourselves is something we all have to do. We all have some kind of trauma. We all have some kind of pain that we experienced in our life. And at the time where we're able to explore that, these are really good opportunities to do it. So doing it with a group of people, whether it's same gender, whether it's just a safe container, find your work, right? So guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, brother.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So Camo, you might recognize his voice. He's been on 2 times before. This will be his 3rd time on. Justin, I'm so happy to have you on for the first time, brother.
Yeah, man, really appreciate it.
Hopefully first of many, man. So I will start off by just saying that I was very hesitant about doing this men's group, and it was for my own reasons. I can give you a litany of things. I didn't have the time, didn't have the energy, didn't want to give the focus, and to be 100% transparent, the reason I said yes was because of you, Camo. We're homies, we're dear friends. I want to support you in any way that I can. I love the shit out of you. I love the path that you're on. And knowing that you were bringing another brother on, Justin, who had not met before, and putting that trust that what you're doing, and that there's trust that we need to just put out into the world, and I proxied that trust through Camo. Yeah. And that first session we did was an open one, right? So I guess it was technically 7 weeks. First one was an open one, and it was such a fucking breath of fresh air, man. It was so beautiful, and I appreciated you guys so much for that. And even going into that first free one, I'm sitting in my meditation beforehand like, fuck this. I got other shit to do. I got so much shit to do. I've got podcasts to edit. I've got clients to book, blah, blah, blah. And then finally my consciousness was like, you shut up. Shut the F up, Adam. Get on that call, hit fucking enter on your Zoom, and just sit there and see what happens. And it was fucking beautiful. So I thank you so much for holding that space for us for those 7 weeks. What do you mind if I ask you guys kind of what drew you to the understanding of wanting to do some kind of work, self-work, men's work? What were those steps for you? Justin, want to start off?
Yeah, so for me, I started men's work about 2 years ago. And before that, I would say I was interested in personal development, predominantly in the form of reading and my own meditation practice. But what men's work really did for me was show me a way to connect to other humans. And that was something I had not done prior to 2 years ago, was really be in a vulnerable space. And in men's work, we talk about the lone wolf a lot. And my form of that was to try to be doing the work, but to do it myself in my own world. It was too scary to be exposed, and really never occurred to me. So And then the initiator was really an initiation, as far as a life initiation with a difficult breakup I went through.
Mm-hmm.
That in the process of that, working with a relationship coach pointed out to me that I didn't have many men in my life, and shared the Mankind Project, and sparked an interest to me to sit in a Mankind open circle, and kind of spooled from there. But yeah, through the dark phases of the breakup,
Mm-hmm.
the that's where I really got hooked, because I'd never been held like that
Right.
through difficult times.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. A lot of us, our parents do the best they can, and but a lot of times, what I've found with myself, the vocabulary word that I love is reparenting. As we get to a point to understanding that there's things that we missed in our growing up, and by no fault of anybody's. Again, there's a small percentage of people that are really out to do nefarious type things, but for the most part, people are just trying to do the best they can with what they got. It's hard to judge that. And so when we get to the point finally where we realize, like, shit, man, there's some stuff to work on, that whole reparenting idea really landed for me. Like, okay, so I'm responsible for my bedtime. I'm responsible for my nutrition. I'm responsible for paying my bills. Like, fuck. All right, cool. Let's do this, right? And a lot of times people didn't have that luxury to have a parent that really taught them the importance of that structure. And maybe that structure is not important for everybody, but some kind of a structure of a human life, right?
Yeah, and one thing, because I describe it as initiation, and one principle from looking at initiations in the past is that it actually wasn't the parents' responsibility to cause that separation and bring a boy into man.
Mm,
And so unfortunately, I never received that, and so it came in the form of a lot of pain and a lot of, but so beautiful to be pulled into that. And yeah, from the simple stuff like you say of making my bed or doing my bills, like things changed for me over the course of that, to where I started to feel responsibility. Yeah.
that's beautiful. Very beautiful. Did that initially lead you to? I know you said the Mankind Project. Is that like an umbrella of Sacred Sons?
No, so Mankind Project is a different men's work
Okay.
organization. They have their own initiatory weekend. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but there's a really awesome open circle that I sat in for many months. And I've also done a few different online experiences with Mankind Project. Um, my men's work, it's been cool because I've had a pretty wide array of men's work experience in the last couple years. So
Mm,
from that open circle, I did a 12-week online initiation, and a handful of other different circles. So I feel like I was kind of exposed to a wide range.
mm,
But Sacred Sons for me was what for sure pushed me into this much leadership
mm,
of holding space in the facilitator role, and that came in the form of a weekend trip and the Convergent Six with Sacred Sons.
mm,
Really deep experience. There's plenty we could talk about there, but from that they offered their leadership training one,
mm-hmm,
and I don't know, something pulled me to it. Something was like, I think at that point I had been doing enough work on myself, and I kind of went through these different phases where, like I say, when it started, it was like, I need healing, I need support, I
mm,
need help. And then there was a transition into where it became, I don't know, moving forward, like moving into the next phases of my life and into more power and more,
mm,
what do I want to do next? And I think it just, something stuck with me about joining LT1, that was like, it's time to learn skills to bring this to other men.
mm,
And then Camo and I have talked about, like, leadership shows up in all areas of our life, right? So what I've learned to facilitate the men's council is really just practice for me to facilitate, so to speak, in all areas of my life.
mm.
Leading yourself.
Leading myself first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
exactly. Like,
Totally.
I mean, yes, I love that, and that's one thing that came through a lot with LT1 was like, it's not something to learn that we're gonna go bring to a men's council. It's what I've
Mm,
experienced. So, and that was huge for me to have someone telling me that what I've experienced and what I already know, the experiences I've already been through, are things I can convert into medicine and experiences for other men. So that was, I mean, it was so much empowerment from Albert as the leader of my group there, because that was the message of LT1, was like, just do it.
Yeah.
You've got it. You've been through it. And so all the experiences that I brought through into the council were just practices that had been impactful to me in my experience. And
Yeah.
and I got a little push to put myself out there and deliver them.
Yeah. Well, when this is something I was taught in teacher training for yoga, and maybe not specifically yoga, but this is where it was drilled in. And man, it's such a beautiful thing to take across your entire life. But to speak to what you're saying is when we can teach from a place of our authenticity, like the pain, the suffering, the challenges, the successes of our own personal experiences, there's so much beauty to that, and there's so much resonance in another human being that can see that this is your story, that you're not only currently working through, but you've lived, right? And this is your experiences, and this is where this stuff lands. And that authenticity, you can't fake that, and that's where that vulnerability comes from, and that's where the passion drives, and that's where you start to get those magneticness of like, okay, cool, like that person's doing some cool shit. I kind of want what that person has. Let's talk, let's dig into that brain and see what the hell they've done to find the peace that they found that I'm not even knowing that I don't even have. There's so much beauty in that. Very cool.
Yeah, that sounds like embodiment, which we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sure.
Most definitely. So Cam, what about you, man? What brought you onto this path?
Absolute freaking necessity. Yeah, this path was so necessary just from being so disconnected. Disconnected from the people around me during addiction and substance abuse, where, I don't know, I've talked about it before on the podcast, but like, who am I if I'm using? And who are the people around me if they're using too? Do we even actually get to be authentically real with each other? Do I actually know you brothers if we were sitting at a bar drinking the whole night? Instead, we choose to spend a couple hours a week together on a call, fully present and revealed in a sense, from our heart space. And that's why it's so resonant for you, and why that first call, which I was like, if Adam joins the first call, he'll be on all six. All six of the next
Glad
ones.
you know me better than I do.
Just because the work is so powerful, and the necessity really for me into men's work specifically came from inconsistency of my fathers, specifically my first father, and then all of the other opportunities for father figures to show up. And I feel like this goes across the board to everybody, especially men. But in my experience, none of them could reach my level of expectation that I had for them.
Okay.
And I think that goes for all children, for their parents. Like, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and I felt ignored. Now I have an abandonment wound, or whatever the array of mistaken beliefs that might come up from those interactions with parents. And that creates the patterns in my life where, oh, this relationship ended horribly, this relationship ended smoothly, but all of them are ending, and I am the consistency within these.
Right.
Okay, my pattern of reacting and or removing myself from being present was really a catalyst to go, oh, yeah, I'm doing yoga, but there's more.
Right.
That's where breathwork came in. That's where the total need for brotherhood came in.
Yeah.
Because similar to Justin, I had you, Adam. That's a lot to put on one person. I don't have any other men in my life, only you. You have to be there all the time for me. And men's work, I'd been not introduced, but invited to some Mankind Project stuff, and it didn't necessarily resonate with me. And seeing the Sacred Sons work and how much their work is about embodiment, about physicality, about engagement and connection, not solely heart and cerebral, but actually in the physical body. And for a lot of my work, it's all about what's the body communicating and how can we utilize these sensations as tools to know ourselves better.
Right.
And through Sacred Sons and moving some of that really stuck energy, especially through father wounding, there was a clarity that came in. I received a new voice after sacred roaring my old voice to completion.
Yeah.
Not being able to talk for a few days, and
Yep. That's where Lionheart birthed, right?
yeah, and I'm a Leo.
Yeah.
So it was always kind of there.
Yeah.
And it's just that specifically is like a way that I want to show up. So having that as like a compass. But yeah, I never roared like that, and I don't think many of us get the chance to, or get told that it's okay to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, for me personally, I remember the first time I was in a yoga class and we did lion's breath. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable at all doing this. Like, I've basically been not in by no means had anybody told like my mom or my dad, like, don't yell, don't be aggressive. But like, basically, like, I was growing up seeing the aggressive side of a male, right? And so, like, I think part of me wanted to diminish that, and it still does. I don't feel comfortable being aggressive. I've only been in fights that were to help others get out of fights. Those were places I worked at, so I never like got physically into a fight. So for me to let that go and to just to be primal with that just felt so uncomfortable. And to be frank, it still does. Yeah, there's few things in life that I've worked on that still just haven't stuck. And embracing that primal energy is one, and the other is ecstatic dance. I just don't feel comfortable at all. Like when we did our ecstatic dance exercise, we'll go over this in a little bit deeper, but I felt so awkward. I was trying to be out of screen the entire time. I'm like, no, I've floated over here and I'm dancing over. No, look, here's an arm.
I'm being free over here.
Arm, like, fuck, man, I felt so awkward. So there's still those things, no matter what the work that we do, there's still things that are going to be challenging. There's going to be that hardship that we find. And maybe that, maybe I'll find comfort ecstatically dancing in front of people and maybe I won't. But I think just the work that you're trying to do, the attention you're putting towards it, lets it not hide in the shadows. I talked about the concept a couple weeks back of being healed with the ED at the end. You're like, done, healed, I'm fucking done.
Finally.
I have no idea if that's even a fathomable concept to me. It's like, I'm done. All the trauma is done. It's like, then tomorrow happens, and then there's another trauma to deal with. It's like, shit. But, life's the longest thing we're going to do, so might as well fucking do something with it.
Yeah. That's one of the things that Sacred Sons has done so well for me, though, too, is, like, acknowledging that that's the case, and there's always something to work on. And yet, like I mentioned in LT1, being pushed to, like, still go out anyway. Like, because it would have been easy for me, I think, to think that I have more to do. That was my old pattern before I got into men's work, was, like, that's what I thought, really, is that if I read one more book, if I get one more place, then I'll be ready to show up in the world. So yeah, that concept of like coming from a not fully healed place and still bringing what I have to the world.
Yeah. So Cam, you and I have sat and co-facilitated a few groups, and I know you've been on a path facilitating groups on your own also outside of the work we've done together. But Justin, was this your first group to lead or to be part of co-counsel of?
Yeah, this was my first co-facilitation, so it felt big, and like was grateful to Camo from the start for supporting me through that. And another piece that Sacred Sons is I love, because that's part of the framework, is co-facilitating and always having someone to support leadership even.
Yeah. Well, so Cam, I'll speak to you first because I've seen your path for a few years now, and watching you grow into that space to hold the space and to hold the container has been such an amazing journey to be proxy to. And this most recent group that you were facilitating with Justin, I really saw a lot of that culmination of those skills that you've been working on. Holding the space, challenging the emotions, diving deeper when people are scared, shitting me a couple times, you know. That's hard work, man. And it's beautiful to watch you grow to that point of that's just like normal comfort level for you now. And to know that there's no ceiling to that. Like you're just going to keep growing, keep getting that facilitation, keep understanding human experience. Like I'm so excited to see where this manifests for you.
Thank you.
Justin, man, you did such an amazing job. Like I had no idea this was your first time holding a council like this. The way that you held the space and the way that you directed was very, very confident and very poignant. And I could see your skills growing every session that you did. And that's such a beautiful thing to see that progression. You know, it's part of my past. I used to build teams, corporate teams, restaurant teams, from salary management to hourly teams. And it's such a beautiful process to watch people grasp the knowledge and to do what they want with it. I was lucky enough to work in facilities where they gave us the autonomy to like kind of run the restaurants the way we wanted to, as long as we hit our numbers. And so to give that freedom to the staff also to say, hey, this is your base knowledge. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to show up with this? And to watch you do that same thing. You have the base knowledge. Now, how does that manifest into you as a human being with your experiences, with your trials and tribulations, and to watch that confidence grow every single session, even sometimes within the session. Like, okay, 5 minutes in, there you are. Now you're holding this session 30 minutes later. It's like, oh, shit. Like, that fucking confidence just jumped up there, man. Like, I could see it in your eyes. It was such a beautiful process, man.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And it did. It grew from the start. Couple things I'm thinking, like, in the first call, it was big for me to do things like step in and ask the rest of the council if anyone resonated with another man's share, or just step in and speak towards what someone had just shared. And then I remember after the first call with Camo, we did our debrief after, and I kind of shared. Camo kind of called me in about there were a couple of times on the first call when I did kind of freeze a little bit. Like I was kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, I think I passed it. One time I was able to squeeze out like, Camo,
Yeah.
Camo. And I think the other time I didn't even get that out. So it was, and then I was so appreciative of Camo to call me in. Like I love that we say calling in, not calling out, but Camo called me in and was like, man, I saw you freeze up a little bit there. Like, what was going on for you, and like how can we work this through? And for me to feel like not judged at all by Camo, that he saw me, which was awesome, and he knew I was capable of more. So that sparked something in me for sure. It was like, okay, I'm gonna show up more next time, because I don't want to let myself down. I don't want to let Camo down, or the men in this container. So
yeah, and having that openness to know that, you know, it's all just information. It's not, there's no emotion attached to it. There's no judgment attached to it. It's just Camo saying, hey, this is what I observed. I felt that you could have maybe done something a little different, you know, and that's information for you to accept and say like, you know what, maybe I can do something different with that.
Curiosity for what was going on for me, and expressing. So yeah.
And I will say that also happens to me too, and it's like, oh yeah, Justin, do you have anything to bring to this? Because I don't.
Right, yes, exactly.
Hopefully you guys could hear that whispered, because I don't. And it's such a responsive place. Like when I, quote unquote, dug into you a little bit, it's like noticing, oh, I see a gem, an emotion, something that wants to be revealed that might be being blocked, because as men especially, but I feel also in society these days, we are consistently told to not speak about these things. We're not allowed to share our emotions vulnerably with people in general. We have to be good. How are you? I'm good. How are you? I'm good. Like, is that really the truth? Like, bring the truth to me. Like, let's check in. What is that? Where is that feeling in your body? Can we expand that and really allow it to be felt, because as soon as we start to feel it, we create that window of tolerance for that feeling to get bigger.
Yeah.
So then we can handle more of that feeling when it arises outside of these sacred containers, these ceremonies, these initiations. Like, these are little hubs of specifically working to find these places,
Right.
whether it's online or in person. The connection is still there.
Yeah.
But when like Justin was saying near the beginning of this, it's during our daily lives when things show up, challenges, struggle, undesirable opportunities, and taking that moment and like, ooh, I'm feeling this, and I'm used to a certain degree, used to feeling this. I know this feeling, I guess. I have an awareness of this feeling. This feeling is XYZ, and I can proceed from a place of less sympathetic nervous system and more from a place of heartfelt leadership and compassion for myself and my feelings, as well as a sense of love and connection for
Right.
the other people involved in situation XYZ.
Yeah.
So
And that's hard
Yeah.
work because that's very conscious. Like a lot of times we rely on those rituals that are the patterns that our brains created. And those sometimes are very, very old patterns. So, a lot of times when people step into work like this, they'll come to me and they're like, I'm so fucking tired. I'm exhausted. Like, yes, you are exhausted because your brain is actively working now. It's not going on the lather, rinse, repeat cycle. This is a situation, pull the file of how we deal with that situation, insert that file, and then just go ahead. That's not working anymore. Now we're going to be conscious about how I'm showing up, the words that are being received, how I'm receiving those words. Are they aggressive? Can I hold the space in aggression and not be aggressor back? It's like there's a lot that goes on in that conscious brain, excuse me, that does require a lot of energy that takes us to that point of exhaustion. So there's a lot it is a lot of work. Like, it's work for a reason. It's a 4-letter word, and it's not easy, but for me, once you realize something's wrong, like, you can be unconscious of something, right? Let's say I've been eating sugar my entire life. I have no idea that sugar is bad for me, the amount of sugar I'm eating, blah, 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 right? But the moment that I actually go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, dude, all that sugar intake, it's fucking killing you. It's going to cause cancer, diabetes, blah, blah, blah. Now I consciously know. I'm consciously doing something negative to my body now. That changes everything, right? That changes how you show up. That changes how it resonates, right? So when we know with a capital G that we're doing something fucking wrong to our bodies, that changes the way right? So once you get that information, it's yours to do with it, but your body knows now. So you better start showing up in a different way, or it's going to really wreak some havoc on you.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, like, that's part of why we do these councils too, right? Is like we say iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man. And that's because if we don't sharpen each other and call each other in when something's not quite right, then life's going to show us that in a much more painful way.
Yeah.
And it was coming through really strong. Like, often from my experience, we do this alone, the lone wolf, and we don't even know that these places that are created to feel safe, to share these wounds, these battle scars that we've gone through as this solo being. And once we find that, once you found this and experienced it, like, you're like all in.
Yep.
Showed up every week.
Yeah.
And cultivated that connection, even with the other brothers outside of like the 2-hour windows that we created. And that's where the work gets accentuated or like exponentialized. I think that's the word. I made up a good one last night.
What you got?
I won't be able to remember it right now.
Damn it.
Salivation.
Salivation.
Yeah,
All right.
total side
Not a real
tangent. If your mouth gets dry during the breath work, put your tongue at the roof of your mouth behind the front teeth so you can find salivation.
Yeah. You know what? You make up a word, you use it with confidence. If frenemy is a word in the fucking Webster Dictionary, so can salivation be.
Yeah,
all right?
exactly.
I'm going to start using
they
that.
taught
We're
him
going to catch
that,
that up.
But yeah, more to the point, we have to come together to do this work. Like, Justin was saying. Doing this work alone only goes so far.
Right.
And then once we start getting our reflections from our other brothers in these deep, conscious, connected spaces, then that judgment starts to get removed that we have against ourselves. We show up for the brother in compassion and love for the brother instead of competition.
Right.
And from that space, anything's possible. We fucking rise. And like how I've seen both of you just rise over the last 6 weeks, years for you and I, Adam. Like,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Hell yeah.
So,
Well, one of the things I want to talk about is some of the practices that we had that we accomplished in our group. But first, I want to define a term because sometimes we take for granted that we use these vocabulary words. People know them. People use them. It's like Mercury's in retrograde. How many people have you heard use that term that actually know what the F it means? Probably like a small percentage. But it's like the new thanks Obama. Like, thanks Obama. Like, everything's like, fucking Mercury's in retrograde. Everything's wrong, It's like, shit. We're just going to generically just blame everything, So one of the words I want to define is embodiment. All right, so, gentlemen, how would you define embodiment?
ooh, I have it up on the dictionary right now.
There you go. Perfect. Let's get
Pulled
the
it up
dictionary
before this
version,
started.
and then we'll dissect it.
Definition of embodiment. One that embodies something.
All right.
The act of embodying, the state of embodied. It's really not
It
helpful.
doesn't help at all. No, there we go.
Next question.
Thanks, Webster.
Yeah, so with that, generic definitions for a lot of things, but what would you say? Is
I
embodiment?
think Justin tapped on it really well at the beginning of this podcast, this conversation, from his practices that he's starting to bring into a leadership role. So I have experienced this exercise, this healing, this process within myself, this unraveling of my old beliefs into changing those neural pathways, and I've done it like this, and I've experienced it. My body has felt it. That I guess it's the difference between like writing the math problem out and using goldfish to do the math problem, and like really using the body to tangibly experience it. And I mean, that's how I learned, so that's why it's so in that sense, embodiment is the body's knowing, the gnosis in the body to then teach, share, or not. That's totally up to you if you want to take it to the community, but it's the knowing of self, really.
Beautiful.
Ultimately.
Okay.
Yeah, I think embodiment is the qualities that we're working on showing up in my body. And so that's how I hold myself. That's how my body responds when I'm being asked something or confronted. So a lot of the embodiment practices we do are to stretch the boundaries of what our nervous system is capable of, such that in everyday life, in everyday situations, we're embodying the traits like stability or strength or calmness, and those are now installed into our body. I think it also starts with awareness. I was thinking back to this was more meditation, but when I first meditated and heard the guidance to pay attention to the thoughts and the voice, it was like, whoa, like it was a trippy experience to realize there's these thought patterns. I think it's similar with the body, of just being like, actually, one of the first embodiment practices I did was with a coach, and she asked me, "Are you comfortable how you're sitting right now?" I was like, "No, I'm not. Like I'm kind of like slouched over, super uncomfortable." So that first piece of embodiment of just like, what are you embodying right now? Are you embodying a strong, grounded individual who's comfortable talking on a podcast? Or are you embodying...
How's that going for you?
Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of a cool trick too, because that's the other thing of it. We start there, we embody the thing we want to be, and then the mind follows.
Yeah. It's almost like stepping into your humanism. It's like, I am a human. I have these skills. I'm going to show up as a human with these skills. And we talked a little bit about this before we started, but, with me, I see the embodiment helping the dehumanizing kind of nature that we've just fallen into as a humanity. Because when we can embody ourselves and embody the practices, like we feel that humanity. And then when we feel our own humanness, it's hard to dehumanize somebody else, right? And it's so much in our vernacular now, like, and I'll do it to myself. Oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm a piece of shit. Like I've just dehumanized myself without even like thinking twice about it. Yeah. And as soon as we don't see either ourselves or somebody else as a human, it's so easy to attack that. And just to keep putting that pressure on and keep throwing those insults out there. There's nothing that's going to do, right? There's no need for that aggression. There's no need for that ignorance, right? A lot of times that's our own ignorance and our own aggression within ourselves. We just don't understand it, right? And so when we can embody ourselves and really understand the skills and the things that we have as humans and things we're working on, we can also see that in others.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
On that. Another way of looking at embodiment that just came up while Justin was talking about the posture, and I don't know, maybe it might be redundant, is like take a moment and just begin to slouch over and feel what it feels like to be slouched over and like compressed in the front side body. And like looking down and the chin's tucked in, and like imagine yourself walking in this way, and like how does that emotionally resonate within your physical cellular structure?
Right.
Okay, so this is kind of like reverse embodiment, I guess. Like, oh, my structural body is like this, and it's representing this emotion.
Yeah.
I see somebody walking down the street all like hunched over and not it doesn't ring out to me like this person's having a good freaking day.
Right.
This person's super confident in what they're doing and where they're walking.
Right.
It's like, I'm gonna send that person love.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're take that deep belly breath and allow that breath to really lift you up and sit tall or walk tall, shoulders back and down.
Yep.
It feels completely different.
Yep.
Like now my body's like more awareness, more open-hearted. And so this is another form of how embodiment can begin to be noticed. So for the listener, like, how are you sitting right now? And what does that, like, look at that, and what does that represent if you were to look at somebody sitting like that?
Right. And sometimes too, like when you notice those things, if you just change one thing about it, right? Like you were saying, sit up straight, pull your chin in, maybe invite a smile to your face, right? A lot of times we might not feel deserving, I guess, maybe of that smile or that happiness, but eventually the smile turns into a natural smile, right? There's this guy named Camo Lionheart that wrote a book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It.
Please.
And right, it's such a beautiful book, short read, great fucking manifestation. But the practice he talks about is he found himself so just disembodied, didn't know himself, didn't love himself, had a big breakup he went through, terrible time, right? And so he went through this big depression, and one of the things that helped pull him out of it was when he would find himself negative self-talk or in that negative guilt, shame cycle that we find ourselves in. If he had a mirror, he'd look in the mirror, but if not, he would just stop, close his eyes, look up at the sky, and say, inhale, I love myself, exhale, thank you, and just do that 10 times, right? And he said in the beginning, probably for months, he was like, I'm full of shit, I don't fucking love myself, but he kept doing it, and he kept doing it, and eventually he believed it, and he started crying. He's like, holy shit, I actually do love myself, And so sometimes, we might not believe those things in the beginning because of whatever story we've been telling ourselves. Like that groove gets really deep in that record needle. I'm not enough, I'm a piece of shit, I'm whatever that story is. And then when we change that groove, it might take a while for that groove to really sink in, because this first groove has been playing on repeat for fucking years, right? And so really embodying that, right? And just stepping into that humanity and stepping into what you feel, right? And knowing that eventually, if you not now, there's that subconscious feeling. It's like, it's gonna be there. It's gonna make sense.
Yeah. The other way I think about embodiment too is coming into connection with the information that my body is giving me. So bringing, like, I'm thinking it's in the vernacular a little bit, right? My gut tells me, or I'm heartbroken. So oftentimes, and for sure for me, that I didn't feel that until it was so overwhelming that I was literally heartbroken and couldn't help but feel it in my physical body. But what we're doing is building these practices so that we connect with that a little bit more, so that we find a little more nuance in what information is being conveyed to us, so that when there's a little bit of a gut instinct of like, oh, like something's there, we can connect with that, interrogate it, and then act on it instead of it being. I think that stuff's in the background no matter what, even if we're not aware of it. It's another thing that, to your point of if you're slouched over and not aware of it, it is still impacting you. It's affecting your thoughts. So
Yeah.
and then I like the reverse embodiment practice because it builds that pattern recognition of like, oh, this is how I feel when I'm like this. And now every time I slouch over, I'm more likely to be aware that, oh, I kind of feel small. I kind of feel insignificant right now. So
Yeah. And Cam, the way you described that, and Justin, what you described also was pretty much my 10-day experience of Vipassana. Like the people that I was around, my own personal mentality, and during that time, I was wanted to be as small as I could be. I was closed off. I was hands in my shorts or hands in my pockets. I was hunched over, trudging through the snow, meditating for 11 hours a day, just dealing with that shit, you know. And it really does, you know. It pulls you in. It pulls you in. So some of the practices I wanted to talk about today that we use during our time. Well, there's a litany of practices, and I can honestly say like every single one of them was very, very eye-opening to me. The 3-card meditation, I think you did, Justin, was beautiful. Love that. It was funny because I was, you know, as a facilitator in my own right, you know, I try to be in the practice, but I'm also like mentally taking notes, you know, so I'm like, oh, what was that thing?
Yep.
What was that thing? So eventually I want to get back to you because I forced myself to stop trying to decipher what you were trying to get to and just be in that practice. And it was so beautiful how it kind of like coalesced at the end. Similar to you, Cam, with the breath work that you do, you know, just like the way that you guide it, the soundtracks that you use, the verbiage that you use, like it's such a beautiful experience. So again, like I'm trying to like take myself out of like, oh, Adam can use this later, or what can this be? How can I learn something from this, to just being in that moment, right? So we did a lot of stuff. Chi generator, that was a big one for me too. That really identified my ego. That fucking that stuff that ego likes to say. So for you guys, how did you kind of come up with the practices you wanted to work with? And I know that you each have your own kind of skill set that you're working with. So did those kind of land like breath work, Cam's skill set, strengthen that? Or was it something like, I'd like to work towards this, so challenge me with this?
yeah, I think so. We touched on it, but bringing through practices that I had fully embodied and fully integrated. So I'm an engineer. I have an Excel spreadsheet with my practices that I've been through.
Good for you.
So building a repertoire. So, and then as we went through forming the trajectory of the course, we kind of set themes for each call that we wanted to bring through. We didn't bring them explicitly, but we had them as a framework. So for things like we wanted to bring through the warrior archetype for one of the calls, and Chi Generator was the best one. There's also Ego Eradicator from Kundalini, but Chi Generator from Qigong was one that I've been through several times in a few different containers and used myself. So that was intended to evoke the warrior that's standing strong through difficulty. The lover archetype for one was the card 3 meditation, which we can dive into. But so, yeah, I think it comes for me from like one step back. It's been a powerful framework for me to use of treating my life as leadership and facilitation or coaching. I use sometimes of like, I don't know if I'm going to be a coach or a facilitator for forever or for a dedicated, but I'll treat my life that way. And so it's helped me because each of those practices is something I have in my own toolkit for when I need to evoke that energy in myself. Um, but yeah, so and then just having the toolkit of the practices that I feel most integrated in and that have formed the most of my journey.
Yeah, and I'm gonna riff off that real quick. That toolkit idea. It's so something that didn't really resonate with me until I started my own spiritual practice. So I grew up, God was in around and around, the words and I grew up in the South, so there's Catholics, Baptists, all the major religions. And nothing really stuck with me. And I had this really jaded idea of this God person. It's like this fucking God person. I don't know who he is. I don't know. I don't want to crawl on my knees for redemption and repentance and stuff. And I just don't I never resonated with this God character. And so, but when my dad passed away 12 years ago, and I'm still in that state of I don't fucking care. I never gave notice to it. Never really gave any idea to it. Dad passed away. My world fell apart, didn't know how to handle it, didn't know how to find any kind of peace, didn't know how to find any kind of thing outside of a bottle, right? Bottle, and that was pretty much my answer. And so now, unfortunately, my mom has cancer, and I'm in a, but the interesting thing is I'm in a better place to understand that and hold space for that. And so I think what I'm trying to get to is that we don't know when we need to use our tools. We don't know when we need to use our faith, or we don't know when we need to use the structure of humanity that we put into place until we fucking need it. And when we need it, there's no time to build it. Right. And so that's, I think, the underlying thing for me that I've really gotten out of this group that you guys have done and my own personal healing journey is get ready. Get ready, because life's fucking crazy. Life is going to give you a lot of what you love, and life's going to give you a lot of what you don't love. And the better prepared you are to meditate when your body gets erratic, to dance your shit out if your body gets stagnant, to have men around you or people around you can be vulnerable with. Have that ready, because life is fucking crazy. Tomorrow can be way different than today was. I mean, be ready for your practices. Be ready to lean into something that you have already. So thank you. First off, let me thank you all for helping us to find those practices. But yeah, so the card 3 meditation, do you want to kind of go into that a little bit, Justin?
Yeah. So card 3 meditation, I most recently went through with in a container man called The Embodied King with Ian Wilkes. So what I gave was pretty directly from him. He modified it from a book called Getting the Love You Want. There's exercises in the back. So I also looked at that book, went through from the source there. But so what we did was a guided meditation where this is the aspect of the work that I feel like I'm manipulating psyches a little bit. And that comes again from kind of doing that work myself of what place am I guiding everyone towards. But in this case, it was connecting to inner child. So being outside of a childhood home and seeing in the distance a figure, and then that figure is you as a child, and using that emotion that usually hits pretty strong, and walking through a childhood home and childhood figures, parents and other guardians. So starting there, again, that's kind of an embodiment piece of let's start with what's alive and stay connected to your body, and let's stir that stuff up. And that's a deep one. I mean, that's probably one of the deeper ones we guided in terms of really stirring the pot.
That unraveled a lot for me.
Yeah.
That one did. That one did. Actually, I still had a meditation last week where I spoke to another younger version of myself. And all that was that thread that started pulling from that card 3 meditation that you did. Just meeting that little human. Be like, oh shit, that kid's cool. You're good. I know you're confused right now, but you're fucking good, man.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, the first time I did that a year or so ago in that initiation online, it was a slightly different format, but same thing, seeing in the distance. And the prompt was to connect with, what does that little boy look like right now? Is he excited to see you? Is he sad to see you? And for me, it was pretty sad to see me, and that hits hard. So,
wow.
but yeah, in this practice, the card 3, using that to stay embodied as we're going through that experience, because it could have just been a list of questions that we answer, like, but keeping it embodied, and then we moved into a kind of a worksheet style where we uncovered the negative and positive traits of our caretakers and looked at how that how we responded to that as kids and how that shows up today. It's particularly in romantic relationships, but it shows up in other relationships as well, as far as when someone's acting a certain way, how do I respond? Do I run away? Do I hide? Do I go quiet? And yeah, giving everyone a chance to connect that with who they were as a kid and see that that's really what in Sacred Sons and other men's work we talk about, the inner child. And
yeah, that so my first inner child meeting was right after that, one of those meditations we did, either that night or the couple days after. But I sat with that again and was like, okay, there's, and the first Adam that popped up was a little 7-year-old Adam. Little bowl cut Adam, knee high, fucking striped socks, short 80s shorts, like just ready for school and missing the shit out of his dad, And so we had a good conversation with that kid and just told him, he's loved, he's going to be okay. It's funny because he actually morphed into an older version of myself. I was talking to him when I started gaining weight and started really leaning into that awkwardness of life and just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know if I should be here in life, all that shit. So that was really powerful. And then I had I've been waiting to share this with you guys. I had another one, and it was just the other day after our last call. I sat down, I meditated after our call, and I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just, like to clear my energies after stuff like that. And all of a sudden, here's, so about 18-year-old Adam, out of mom's house, graduated, doing nefarious childlike things, right? And it was interesting because like this Adam all of a sudden just popped in, right? Wearing an orange Abercrombie shirt, puka shell necklace, short bowl cut hair, just total 98 kid, right? Yeah, right Amazing. In there, right? And, but the interesting thing was, so back then I used to use a lot of illicit drugs recreationally, and a lot of it was like LSD or psychedelics. And so as I'm sitting there looking at this version of Adam, Adam looks up at me, that version of Adam, and just all of a sudden like gets his wide-eyed look, and I'm like, wow, you're on a lot of drugs right now. You're on a lot of drugs. I think this might have actually happened when I was on drugs. I talked to an older version of myself, and that older version of myself said, hey, dude, you're cool, man. Everything's going to work out just fine. And so it was just so amusing to like think as this 40 some odd year old man that I am now, entering into the psyche of this hallucinating younger Adam and actually having that be a physical thing that actually happened, where this older version of Adam reached out to that version of Adam through space and time of chemicals combined and said, you're going to be fucking cool, man. Sit in that blue recliner, smoke your weed. 20 years from now, you're going to be understanding of what you're fucking doing in life. And that wide-eyed Adam just looked at me as I stepped away, and I did like some weird thing in his face just to make him weirder. And I'm like, oh, that was amazing. That was, because I reached out to my old person, and I have a lot of damage that I found out that Adam has to get through. I used to sell drugs, used to have a nefarious lifestyle, so there's a lot of shit that goes on with that. But it was really nice to connect with that version of Adam in almost like a shared space. Like we both know this space. Like I dabble in that space now, but that Adam pushed himself in that space a lot when he was younger. So it was almost like we met in that space. We had this counsel, and it was like that information needed to be given to that 18-year-old child to know that 40 years from now or 20 years from now, you're going to be just fine. Weird shit, man. But I love it, and that's stuff that like I would never have even thought of doing if I hadn't been proxy to y'all and this group that we do, and this work that we're doing, this vulnerability that we're creating, to know that it's okay to go back and look at some of this stuff and to fix some of that stuff, and not just to be like, well, that happened, throw it up, and I'm going to walk away and just try to forget about it. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Sorry. I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
That's so cool. While you were beginning that early part of that story, I was like, I wonder if that happened to him when he was 20 something, and like old Adam showed up, and you like have the memory of that. That's really amazing. Like,
Oh man.
It's a movie. That's
Yep.
some like
I know, right? Yeah, I could
midnight
recommend a book
gospel
about
shit.
that. All right, dude. Fucking love me some Midnight Gospel. So Cam, let's kick it over to you, man. So you've been doing breath work for a long time. I love your breath work. Love to watch it grow. Love to watch what you're doing with it. So what were some of the things that drew you to bring the practices you brought in?
Relying on my strengths.
Go.
And there's like a level in this work of like push your edges, and there's also playing to our strengths. Like we're in a brotherhood because Justin over here has all the Excel sheets and I have scribbles and a notepad.
There you go.
So there's a balance that we get to create through each other's strengths.
Definitely.
Guiding movement, guiding breath have been part of my life for like 6 years now. Yoga since I was 20. I'm 36. I've been guiding that for strong 6 years, 7 years. Breath had always been a part of that. I'm somebody who you'll hear me say inhale and exhale between every pose.
Yep.
Because I found that that's like the most important part, and even from when I began, I was like, the breath is the key to all of this. Which led me to guiding specifically breath work and some pranayama classes. And so bringing those skills and knowing what the breath can do for enticing the revealing of emotions, for awakening different spaces in somebody's body and somebody's self to open the doorway to more vulnerability. And that kind of like in my facilitation in this type of container, this men's work container, is like, oh, I can see that. I see those tears rising up in you. Or it awakens for a brother to share how they're angry and they haven't, if I'm angry and I'm holding that, well, what do I need to do to transmute that energy out of the body? I need to sacred roar. So, okay, this breath work awakened this emotion, and now I'm here to support that brother to move that energy, to cry those tears, to yell that yell, to shake it out, whatever is necessary there. I actually don't really remember all of the exercises that I guided off the top of my head. I go with the flow.
Yeah, no,
But
and that's you stepping into that authenticness that you have. Like you have the skills, you read the room, you go with that, right? As a yoga teacher, when I first started out, I would have very detailed notes about what I want to do, how I want to do it. Not going to deviate from this. Somebody comes in, says my shoulder hurts. I'm like, well, tough shit. We're doing a lot of side planks today.
Understand.
But now, again, you've been able to embody your practice more. You understand the information on a deeper level. You've had it explained to people. You've had them have their inquisitive looks and be like, oh, I should explain this differently. You get that instant feedback to where now you can go into a room and be like, what do we need? Cool. All right, we're going to do this. Right. And that's that beautiful thing. And there's nothing wrong with the process to get there. And even if you still walked in with all your notes and your fucking, the to-do list, check mark, this, that, it's still going to be beautiful because that's authentic you. Yeah. You're coming from that place where you need to be. A lot of times with that breath work, for me, it was unlocking an emotion that I wasn't aware I was allowed to express. Right. I've tried to be a kind of a level-headed guy, and I think a lot of times with that, I've not expressed or explored that raw masculine energy, and I don't know how to do it, and I feel guilty, and I feel like I'm doing something wrong when I do. And I think that's because a lot of times it comes out in a negative way because, again, I don't know how to use that energy properly. So like for a little while I'd hit a punching bag. And I was like, oh, that felt good. But then that went away, and I do yoga, do meditations, have a lot of practices, but that the healthy practice to expel aggressive male energy was not there for me. And even though like I still have, you guys have introduced me to practices, it's still something inside me that I feel guilty, and I feel like I'm doing something wrong you know. So there, and that's just deep-seated shit that we got to get past. You know, we got to understand. And so, you know, you guys creating those containers for us to explore that and really like bounce it off each other too. It's like, man, I just experienced this and that was crazy. And I didn't think anything like that. And then you have another brother that's like, hey, something similar to me. It's like, oh God, I'm not alone. Like, that felt so good, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. With, so with breath work, with all the energy work that we're doing, all the kind of things, was there an overarching goal for the practices? Was it like to create vulnerability, create safety? You know, did you have like a plan like that going into it?
For my side of it, it was to poke the bear, so to speak.
There you go.
Give challenges, challenge the brothers into deepening into connection and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Specifically with like conscious connected breath that I guide fairly weekly in this area. Awaken, create connection to body and connection to the sensations that are there, and those sensations are representing emotions, and then putting voice to those emotions and then transmuting them through embodiment exercises or confrontation with a brother in a safe container that has boundaries and rules to engage, like say wrestling.
Right.
Here's the rules, we agreed to these rules, and okay, begin. 6 minutes.
Yep.
Go. Granted, we didn't do that online in this container.
Although there were people that wanted to.
Yeah, so that's generally what I'm wanting to bring through as like, okay, how like can we pull you all into deepening connection? And so connection for me is like the main overarching idea, and I don't know if Justin wants to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I can't help but think being my first round, there was an element of just kind of holding on to the framework given to us by Sacred Sons. Really connecting with the practices again that meant the most for me. I like that, creating connection, creating a space where men can experience what we've experienced.
Yeah. One of my, I think one of the biggest eye openers for me for the work that we did, as far as activities go, was the chi generator that Justin guided. You did a couple. The last session we did a chi exercise, but I think about 3 weeks before that we did a big one. And that one for me, I think I spoke a little bit about this on the call afterwards, but for me, that one was one of the most pivotal ones for me to understand how far I've come with the work I've done and how much that I still have to do, and not in a bad way, you know, not like a spotlight, like, you're still fucked up, dude. No, it's like, oh, cool. That voice is still there. So for me, when I found yoga, I pretty much just dove into yoga. Yoga made sense to me. It worked with my body. I didn't have to buy extra shit. Didn't have to weights, didn't all this crap. You know, just me, my mat, I go sweat and I come home, and it was beautiful. And but for me, so for the past almost 10 years, that's my physical practice, and it's been a great practice. It's done me well. It has helped me lose weight, helps me get back into shape. Lower back's not shitty anymore. All this stuff. But the thing that I realized when we did the chi generator, and so for our listeners, what we did was basically we stand with our feet about hip distance apart, little wider, little bend of the knees to activate the legs, and then we held our hands in front of us, palms facing in, like you're hugging somebody. And then from there, we did that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. And then from there, we kept the crouch, and then we lifted our arms above our heads, palms facing up, little bend of the elbows, right? And so again, there's so much activation in your body. And so what I realized, as soon as my hands went above my head, my ego kicked in and was like, fuck this. This is bullshit. You don't fucking need this. You know where your energy's at. And I'm like, oh, wow. You're loud. Damn, where have you been? And then I realized, holy shit, that's the voice inside my head during yoga. And I've gotten so used to it, I've kicked it out. Yeah, so shit talking to why are we holding this pose for so long? I can't believe you just did that transition to now chi generator. This is stupid. Why are my hands facing the ceiling and my arms are on fire? What is this doing? I'm like, it's doing exactly what it fucking needs to do. This is exactly why you're doing this, you know? And so it really it really did put a spotlight on how strong my ego still is and how negative that perception is.
Yeah.
And so thank you for doing that, because man, I thought I was doing pretty good on my ego stuff, and it's like, oh, hey man,
Still something there.
still something there.
Yeah, I mean, I've dove in the most to Qigong, and I'm still very new on that journey, but before this container, I had exited a dedicated container of Qigong, and yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I connect with it so much, because there's, in a lot of the forms, there's very little motion going on, and so it's very hard to escape from what signals your body is sending and what energy is flowing. So because for me, I've experimented, Kundalini and some others that are a lot more energy moving actively, but Qigong and Qi Jin pulls it out with stillness. Yeah,
Qigong, Tai Chi, those are all practices that have been on my, like, okay, dude, you need to make some time for this stuff. But so I've dabbled with Tai Chi a little bit, but Qigong, that was my first experience, and that was amazing job, man.
Yeah, thank you. And just to share, like, from my perspective as facilitator, there was, like, definitely some edges for me in terms of guiding that, and a couple examples. I had kind of generally just vaguely scripted the way it would go, of course, the forms, and then what kind of guidance I'd be pushing, just knowing from my own experience, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, what's everybody feeling. But pushing you guys was an edge for me, like I tried to bring in a little bit of fire to the guidance as well, of like, keep going, you got this, like, stick with it, fight through it. So that was a bit of an edge. It's also probably one of the longer things I've guided, so there's a couple moments in it where I was like, oh, what am I going to say next? And like staying calm through that and be like, it's going to come. It's all right if there's a little silence.
Exactly. And it was received beautifully. Your dictation, the coaching that you did, the way you held the space, the continued guidance, like it landed beautifully.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, very good stuff,
Thank
man.
you.
The one of the things that the practices that really landed in an interesting way with me was, and it was, I can honestly say, whenever I think maybe Cam, you're the one that initiated the practice, was if you have an issue with the way another brother has shared, this is an open forum to bring that up. And immediately I was like, oh, wow, I've never heard that question before. And at first it was like, okay, where are we doing this? What's going on here? And I'm like, okay, cool. We gotta teach people how to hold space and how to receive information and how not to just react and just like put up your shields and start barking your shit back, right? Loved it, right? The idea behind it. The interesting thing for me was one of the brothers had said, they had something with me, and I'm like, okay, cool, right? I'd love to explore this. I think I'm in a place to where I can hold that space and hear what had to be said. But at the same time, there was a bit of fear. I'm like, oh shit, what did I do? Like, did I show up a wrong way? Did I antagonize somebody? Did I maybe I was too distant? I had just found out that my mom had cancer before I was able to really share it with everybody. So I'm like, shit, man, maybe they can see this distance that I have. And the brother, said, okay, so, and you guys facilitated this. Okay, so here are the ground rules. Here's what we want to kind of look at. Please stay safe, blah, blah, blah. And then you let us go. And I posed myself to be ready to receive something constructive that I can work on, which ended up being just a desire for further connection, which was so beautiful. It's because I'm like not ready to, I was, in a stoic way, I'm not ready to pounce. I'm not ready to be the aggressor, but I'm also ready to like receive something potentially like negative about myself. And so to initially, have that poise and then to have it soften into like, I just want to hang out. Like, yes, me too. I do too. Fuck yeah, man. That's what's up. So like that was such a cool practice to bring in. It probably didn't go the way that you guys had expected it. But so would you be able to speak to some of the ways that practice has gone, I guess more traditionally than what was experienced on our call?
Totally.
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. So a technology, a tool that we are that we use and are given in the Sacred Sons Leadership Training 1 is charge clearing. So this happens when maybe one brother is triggered emotionally or upset by another brother's words or actions. And this happens often. Often people get triggered by other people. Oh, this person cut me off, or this person's doing this, like
Right.
for an example. In this specific situation, I feel like that was more of like a golden charge. Like
Right.
it was a little like, oh, I'm just gonna speak to it a little bit. Oh, I'm feeling like disconnected from you, and I want to be more connected to you. It's like that's beautiful. Like
Friendly one,
how? What
yeah.
am I gonna facilitate here? Like I don't know. Let's just let them really be in connecting for a moment.
Definitely.
In other situations, it can be trying to keep confidentiality really poignant, because these containers are confidential, so that we can really go into our depths. Just speak it generally. One brother has a charge, a triggered moment, an upset with another brother. And we give the opportunity, whether it's online or in person, to call each other in when those undesirable charges happen. This is so that we can clear that air and come back to deeper connection. And this happens very similarly to some of the other like inner child and shadow work that I do. Is it's a taking responsibility for the feelings that I am having. If I were to say have a charge with you, Adam, I am taking responsibility based on these facts that this happened and it made this happen for me, and I'm taking responsibility for these feelings by bringing it into your awareness.
Right.
You didn't put the dishes away.
Right.
And now I'm upset and angry, and that happened to show up in my life when my younger sister never did the dishes or never did chores, and I always had to clean up for her. And
Right.
going into these deeper processes that reconnect us into communion,
Yeah.
into community, into wholeness as like a brotherhood, rather than, oh, this person's getting ousted because they did this. It's like more of the idea of, oh, this person went crazy and did this action, this action, this action, and in like indigenous ways, from my knowledge, I haven't had this happen personally, or no, you know. But they would bring that person into the center and give them love and help bring the spirit back to them, because their spirit has left them. So in this way, it's like, oh, you might have done something you're not aware of. Let me bring this to your intention. It did this for me. Here's why it's affecting me. And is there a resolve that we can find together where you can also take responsibility for the action if necessary? Would you like to expand on that? Because I know there's more. There's more to it. But that's what I take from it as like the key element of like the healing part of the process. But there's other levels to it.
Yeah, I'll share what I love about the process, and it starts with what you're talking about, of acknowledging that the person who has charge, like we're doing the clearing for that person. And I loved how you shared, like when you first got called in, it was like, what did I do wrong? And I think that's so natural and normal, or happens so frequently for us. And so we're removing that and saying there's nothing you did wrong. This is about the other brother who's bringing some charge in with you. And we're doing it in the name of connection. And I think we framed it as the energy that's present, the charge that's present, is preventing you from showing up fully. So, and then just to lay out the framework a little bit, like the person who has the charge is offered to present the facts only. So as the camera sees it, what was the action that occurred, and we get that out first, and then after that we can facilitate going into emotions and judgments. So I love that because it separates, what happened from like how did I respond. So right there we're getting at like this person didn't do anything wrong. They just did something that brought something up in you.
Right.
And then after that, we can go into projections. So, what does this remind you of, or what, projection is a repressed part of myself that I put onto another person. So, one that's fairly common for me. I'm a fairly quiet person, at least in the past. So a lot of times, I've had containers where someone's talking too much or talking over me.
Oh yeah.
So pretty easy to see that that's charge in me that I've felt like for a lot of my life that I'm not being seen or paid attention to or had my opportunity to share. So when another brother just speaks, just being himself, that can be charge in me that's like, and then I come up with all these judgments that are like, this brother doesn't care about anyone else. He's just here to do his own thing. He's
Right.
not paying attention to anyone else. And so this charge clearing beautifully clears all that and lets me see that's all in me. And maybe I've even projecting from middle school when I didn't get called on or no one talked to me as much in groups.
Right.
And so I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at this projection, which is this childhood thing that happened.
And it's almost like it's teaching people how to have healthy conversations. you know?
Healthy
Yeah,
conflict.
right.
Yeah.
I think we found ourselves in the West in a place that if for some reason I disagree with you for whatever it is, like you like 2% milk, I like whole milk. Fuck you.
Cancel.
We're done, right? Now we can't be friends anymore. We can't even coexist. It's like why we can have differing opinions and honor those differing opinions and still cohabitate and still be people together, there's that healthy dialogue is so lost right now, and so creating that space for men, especially, there are a lot of times men tend to be the aggressors because we don't know what to do with our aggressive energies, to teach us how to hold that space and to be witness to somebody else's emotions, letting them fully speak and then giving you that opportunity to retort. That's a lost art, and I think there's a lot to that. So there's a lot of ignorance in the world, general, right? Ignorance because we don't know what we're talking about. Ignorance because we feel like we know what we're talking about. But when you have an ignorant statement, and that's perception, right? Well, I can think that what you're saying is ignorant. You can think it's the smartest thing you've said. It's perception, right? So let's say somebody is saying something ignorant to me, what I feel is ignorant, and I immediately meet that with aggression. That's fucking stupid. You're an idiot. I can't believe you think that way. That person that just said the perceived ignorant statement is going to dig into that ignorance because that's their knowing, right? And so when we meet ignorance with aggression, it digs in the ignorance because that's all that person knows. They're holding on to that idea of their thing. And a lot of times they're holding on to that because nobody's ever giving them the opportunity to speak their full mind for them to actually feel and hear what they're saying, how they're saying it, and be like, oh, I'm fucking ignorant. Damn, that was a dumb statement, right? So we learn how to hold the space. We learn how to coax the strongest conversation, the strongest argument that person has. Help them build that strongest argument. I think it's called strong manning in debate, right? Don't want to attack their weak argument. Give them the strongest argument that they can. And then that gives you the opportunity to fully hear them, maybe understand something about their perception that you might not have before. And then you get that opportunity to retort, right? And it's a longer conversation. Yep, because you're not cutting each other off. You're not getting emotional, but there's so much more productivity that can come from that stuff.
Yeah, and to be able to sit in that type of a situation where specifically we'll use that example. There are emotions that are going to come up, but if you're emotionally intelligent, if I'm to develop my emotional intelligence in a way that I can know that the feeling of an emotion actually only lasts like 90 seconds. The actual sensation that rises from this person saying this ignorant thing and I have anger come up because it's ignorant, that lasts 90 seconds. The rest of it's ego, it's mind holding on to this story like, oh, that person is so ignorant, and then it can keep going. And so if we can begin to, in my opinion, if we can begin to become very aware that these are simply sensations that are coming up in the body, and we can breathe into them, recognize them as transient, and find neutrality quicker, then maybe I can listen a little bit longer, a little bit more intently, and hear what is actually trying to be said from the person
Right.
based on their feelings, and then reflect that back to them. And that's a big part of this as well. Somebody shares and it's like, I see you. I hear you saying this.
Yeah.
Amazing. Or, I have a question. Can I ask a question? Are you open to that?
Right.
Cool. Awesome. Here's the question. Then we can start to dive deeper. So,
Yeah.
so this person said something ignorant, and you're like, in your head, fuck that. Like, that's so stupid. Ooh, wow, that really hit me, and like I really wanted to respond in anger. Why did I want to respond in anger?
Yeah.
Okay, anger is just passing. What is it that I actually want to know here?
Yeah.
What do I want maybe them to know? Can you explain that a little bit further for me? Because I'm not exactly grasping that concept.
Yeah.
And maybe they get lost in their explanation. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's that ability to sit with each other, especially when we're in a view of opposing ideas and beliefs, which beliefs should just be ideas, in my opinion.
Right.
And then they can change, they can move, they can flow. And for me, like this last 2 years, 2.5 years has been polarizing.
Yeah.
And instead of going this way or that way, I just rested in my body. Like, what does feel right for me right now? Because if I don't listen to how my body feels, does it want to embody the hunching over and like hiding, or would this decision open me up?
Right.
And so going back to the body to even make decisions and coming back to our neutral space to engage. Oh, Justin, we don't see eye to eye on that. Interesting. I really want to know more because I want to understand you.
Right.
Because ultimately, from what I've found in this work, especially when we ask, oh, does any other brother experience shame around how they've responded to a partner before? 100% of us,
Yep.
hands up.
Yep.
Oh, so what are we seeking? Like, we're all pretty much seeking love and acceptance, stability, general ease in life, even though we know it's a struggle, and finding that together. If we can find the common ground, oh, you want the same thing as me, like a family and to be loved, beautiful. Like, you might have a different idea of what that looks like, or how you'd want to live your life, but can we find that we are at the essence in unity with how we live?
Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
commonality there.
Yeah.
And yeah, when we can really look at and understand that, we're all just doing the best we can. We're all just trying to make the happiness that we can, keep our family safe, keep our friends happy, keep ourselves safe, When we can look at it from that lens, you can start to understand that it doesn't need to make sense to you because it made sense to that person at that time and they're doing the goddamn best they can. We can definitely look outside and judge and say, I would have done this differently. I can't believe they did that. Why did you wear that today? Like, fuck, that's probably the only thing that they had to wear, man. It's the only thing that they could find. Whatever the thing is, like, we can take our judgments out of it and just accept the human as a human. Like, and that's what you guys are doing. I'm so excited to be proxy to y'all and to be witness to this because this is the work. This is the work to help us to become humans again and to understand and to know that, like, we all got shit to work on. It doesn't mean we're broken. We just got to become aware of it and just start chipping away. Start chipping away at this stuff, man.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that's a big one for me actually, and why I resonated so much with Sacred Sons and bring this through, because like we put on the banner to publicize this, all of you is welcome here.
Yeah.
And that's one of Sacred Sons' taglines, and it's powerful, especially when we feel that we can show up with our shame and our fear and our judgments and everything, and our joy and our successes and achievements. We can show up with all of that and have it, because on the shame side we feel like we're going to be judged, on the success side we feel like we're going to be judged because but all of that, so
Yep, definitely. So this container we did was online. We did a Zoom call. Do you plan on doing more in-person stuff now that the world is open to more in-person stuff, or do you like the ideas of doing the Zoom calls or more, the online spaces?
I think there's medicine in both. Um, there's something amazing about even through the cubes of Zoom calls or whatever platform you use. We could connect. So we're in Seattle area. We could connect a brother in Oregon with a brother in Mount Vernon and two people in Kirkland with three brothers in Seattle, and we could all create a depth, and it can be accessible all the time because it's through this. Oh, I can be at home. I don't need to travel half an hour or 2 hours to meet these brothers in person.
Right.
There is something very potent about some of the work that we can't do online that can only happen in person based on the physicality of what work might want to be done,
Yeah.
what wants to be revealed. So that's my feeling. There's power in both.
Yeah.
I would love to continue in both routes. I know more in-person stuff is happening around here coming up, but Justin, you want to speak to your outlook?
Yeah, I guess the other point to online that came up for me was just accessibility
Yeah.
and making it a little bit easier for someone to show up, because I mean we're doing this podcast, right? Because what is men's work? And that can sound like kind of a strange concept or a confusing concept of men sitting in a circle and talking. But when you do it online, it's from the comfort of your home. Worst case, you can leave the meeting if you really have to, or there's a ease of access that's cool. I'm glad we can offer that.
Yeah. And then with you potentially, going to Australia for
Yeah.
a little bit of time,
Yeah.
that does open that platform up to
Yeah,
us.
it's definitely kind
to
of a
still have
logistics
communication
piece
with
with
you.
what I'm continuing with Camo for sure, because that'll not be possible for Camo and I to do stuff in person. Moving in the next couple months. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole thing. I don't know what I'll land to in Australia, but I'll definitely be seeking out community and fellow co-facilitators. So if there's opportunity to do stuff in person, I mean, that'd be another first for me. All right, I've never facilitated in person either, so there'd be a whole.
Yet.
But yeah, I totally agree with Camo. I think online and in person are both valuable offerings.
Yeah, I agree. As much as if people that listen to my podcast, I talk a lot of shit about Zoom. Not a big fan of the platform, but there is, I do understand the connectivity that it brings us. As a yoga teacher, when we're doing Zoom classes, I have people from all over the United States in my classes now, whereas it used to just be people that were in that studio. So that the reach is much bigger to give that comfort, that familiarity of, okay, I'm gonna dip a toe in. And to be honest, I don't know if I would have gone to a 6-week in-person one, right? Because again, my time, blah blah blah, all the things that narrative would have taken over
for me too. If it'd been a 45-minute drive each way, I work full time. Like I don't think I could have pulled it off.
Yep. So this made it accessible, and then it brought the opportunity for a lot of people to find
the
that
connecting across is cool too. I mean, the I've got two brothers I spent during that 12 weeks a while back, and one's in Romania and one's in Amsterdam, and they're like close of brothers as I have, because we connected deeply through the Zoom format.
Through the work.
Oh yeah. Well, what's next for you guys? I know that you're moving to Australia very soon, Justin. Cam, you're going to be in this general Seattle area for a little while longer.
Yeah.
So where do these paths take you guys? What's the next step for y'all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting at the edge of some amount of unknown with moving to Australia. It is awesome though, having this community. Like I've already connected with a Mankind Project Open Circle. Might even meet up with a guy during this 2-week trip that I'm leaving on tomorrow. So for sure, that's going to be one of the main ways I stay connected and build community. It feels so good to be moving across the world and know that I'm going to land in a circle that will feel instantly connected. I think we're gonna try to continue online. The time zone works out that we should be able to find an overlapping time that I can call in.
Hell yeah.
So Camo and I will keep talking about putting things together.
Well, selfishly, I support that 100%.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and so yeah, and then in Australia, I'll just be building and seeing what comes. There's Sacred Sons isn't there, but I'm gonna do my best to find community, build it, and
Hell yeah.
see what happens.
That's beautiful, man. Congratulations on the move, man.
Thank
I'm excited to hear about what's these next chapters are for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
adventure.
Hell yeah, man. Cam, what about you, brother?
Focus. I've been doing a lot of planning over the last winter months and through a lot of struggle, which the Brotherhood has definitely helped keep me steadfast in my commitments to the work that I'm doing, whether it's men's work or breath work or yoga. And with this release of mandates of recently, yoga studios are opening back up, so I'm expanding most likely to at least one more studio, guiding movement, continuing to work with Sacred Sons, planning to support them in their retreats. And then I have a new project called Energy Alliance Project based out of Kansas City, focused currently on men's work and awakening energy within the masculine, to know thyself better, to grow, to expand, I'll be leading the yoga and physical side portion of the work there, but we're also doing a bunch of breath work, Reiki trained facilitators,
Cool.
energy, discourses and knowledge sharing, and just cultivating brotherhood in different ways.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this project feels really good, and more in that, like, the energies within and all around. And what I love also is that there's a contrast between Sacred Sons, in that Sacred Sons feels like, yes, there's put our prayers up and really embodied, like, connection.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for both of those projects, to continue. Have a retreat coming up maybe in August for men.
yeah.
Also, we'll just kind of take them one day at a time,
There you
though.
go, man. You
I
know,
have
I think the thing that excites me about y'all, just that version of what y'all just shared, is that you're stepping into some just very different demographics, right? Whole new country you're moving to, Justin. Midwest, it's a whole different demographic, whole different mentality than the Northwest. You know, and so I'm really excited to follow up with you guys and to see how this, what the men's work does in those type of situations, and some of the stories that might come from that. Because, like, there's, everybody needs it. We all need it. We all need work, not men's work, women's work, person work, human work, whatever the fuck it is. Call it what you want, man. But we all got work to do. And yeah, man, I'm so happy to know both of you, and to know that there are people like y'all in this world, mass amounts of people that are trying to share this information, to bring this knowledge up, and to know that we all got shit to do. We're all going to be having something to work on, and there's nothing wrong with that. Finding the community that supports you, finding the just the container that makes the most sense to you, to find that journey that you're willing to step forth on. It's beautiful stuff, man.
Yeah. And we definitely have some work to do, Adam and I,
Yes.
with our brother Ian.
Yes, we
So
do. Yes, we do.
we've been plotting a while, having this. We've planted the seed many a moons ago, and
Then we all
at
got
some
busy as
point,
shit.
yeah, we will have a beautiful retreat down in Baja. So
Definitely.
look forward to that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, brother.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for the work you're doing for yourselves, for humanity, for the men, for everything that you guys do. I love you both, and I'm very, very happy to be a part of your lives. Thank you for being part of my journey. I don't mean that with any kind of like cheesiness at all. Like, I really do. You guys are just been an integral part. thank you so much. I love you guys.
Mahalo, brother.
Yeah,
Love you
thank
too.
you too. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for being part of mine too.
Definitely.
It's a good
you
wrap
too,
to that
Yeah.
7 week container. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Close
nice
it out.
bow on it.
There you go.
Beautiful.
All right, brother. We'll see
Mahalo,
you all
bro.
next time.
Peace.
Thank you so much for spending time with Camo, Justin, and I. Really love these two gentlemen and really appreciate what they're doing for humanity. If you like the podcast, please hit like, subscribe, or leave us a comment. And love you all so much. Obasins. We'll see you next time.